Okay, well, thank you, Mayor and Council. What you have before you is, I'll do a proposed budget presentation. You have a hard copy in front of you as well. The pictures, two things, the pictures were not updated yet, so we'll get that updated when we finalize everything. The most important thing that we wanted to get to you guys at this point was the numbers. We received our finalized TAV on July 25th, which was the Monday, and then we worked our numbers from there and went through everything. So everything was final, everything was certified. We then, last week, were able to receive like our no new revenue rate and our voter approval rate. And so all that's worked into this budget, and then we based everything that we did based on the goals that you guys presented to us, and then worked from there. So we'll go through those things. Feel free to ask questions as we go along. This is your budget. This is just staff's recommendations to you guys based on what we need and following those goals that you guys approved a couple of meetings ago. So I'll go through these. If you have questions, please let me know. And then for the next meeting, I would want to ask, which I was hoping most everybody was here, the next steps. We have one more meeting before we actually propose and for you guys to approve the final budget on September 13th. So from council's perspective, I know in the past what we've done is we've gone back, you guys have looked through this just at this presentation and said, okay, give us a couple of options. So I think a couple of years ago, I gave you like 5 or 6 options to go with and took some capital out, different tax rates, different fund balance targets, things like that. I think last year we did 3 of those. And then the final meeting, we normally do our, like we do our live spreadsheet where you guys can take stuff in and out that you guys have looked over. You can play with the tax rate, how you want it to look. And so we can go that same route if you'd like to, or if you guys want to just go straight next week to the live session and start plugging things in and out, that's going to be completely up to you. We just need some direction on how you want to handle that. Either way is fine with staff. We're fine tuning the budget every single day as we go along. So either way, so just think about that, and maybe you guys could help us, give us some direction maybe at the end of the presentation. And so, here we go. Okay, so a couple of dates talked about. So tonight you'll be getting the proposed budget on September 13th in a little over a month. You'll have a public hearing on the tax rate. You'll have the public hearing on the budget. You'll adopt you'll adopt the budget, ratify the tax rate, and then adopt the tax rate in that order. Tonight, you will have 2 things on your agenda. That's just setting these hearings. That's all that's doing. We're not setting any tax rates or anything like that. You're just setting the public hearings for those tax rate and for the budget. A couple of budget assumptions. This is just an overall look at it. Overall, we have a strong financial position with the stable fund balances. Our fund balances were stable. This year, I know in the past, we've started out at 20% as a target of our 20% of our expenses as a target for our fund balance. 2 years ago, we dropped that down to 19% to be able to do some things that we wanted to do along with lowering the tax rate. And then last year, we lowered it down to 17%, kept most everything in that we wanted to, and got to the tax rate that you guys wanted to get to. And so this year, that's where we started. So everything in that budget book is a 17% target. I'm not touching anything. It just went crazy. I didn't touch anything. I need slideshow again. Yeah, I need the slides. I got you. I got it. I promise I didn't have my hands on it. And so we started at 17%, and then that's where we worked from. And you'll see that on the live spreadsheet when you see it. We talked a little bit about sales tax last time. We did a revenue growth of 5% over what we're projecting to receive. And so what that equates out to is a 13% increase over what we budgeted in 21-22. Obviously, you guys get a monthly report, so you see that we're doing really well on our sales tax. So over the last 5 years, we took an average, and we're about 11% over on our sales tax actually, I think it was the last 3 years that we looked at. COVID year, I don't know if we kept that one in there or not, I can't remember. But so we kind of met in the middle of that. I don't know of any new retail that's coming in addition to that. So I don't know how much, if a 10% or 11% or 13% increase is realistic. So that's why we kind of met in the middle, and it's still a 5% increase over what we've already received. I mean, tax-free weekend, I don't know if you guys were out. It was pretty busy this weekend, so I think we're still going to do okay in sales tax. So I don't think it's going to level completely off, but I don't think it's going to continue to jump in the same direction. Inflation kind of has a little bit of effect on that too. I mean, disposable income and things like that. It's behavioral sales taxes, so that's why you just don't want to go too far in that sense. Property value growth at 9.3%, so that's your actual TAV growth there compared to last year to this year, and there's a later slide that has the actual numbers. New property values increased 113%. That's not a typo, that is true. It went from 50 million new property, so this is anything that was new and put on the tax rolls as of January 1, and it went from 50 million to 107 million. So that is a good increase there. So that's good for the housing market. Rate increase for water and sewer at a little over 20%. You have a presentation that our rate study consultant will do for you this right after my presentation to explain that. I know it's a big jump. We also have a lot of needs on that, but they'll get into the weeds. They've got a really good presentation to show you guys where we're at and kind of where we need to go. And we put that in the budget last year for that rate study just for this purpose because we knew it hadn't been done in, I think, 4 or 5 years. Health insurance rate increase, we have it in there in your proposed at 8%. We just got verification actually, I think Wednesday or Thursday from Sherry and from our insurance broker. And then we verified it today, but that increase for health insurance will actually be flat. So we won't actually have an increase. So we can work that in. We didn't have time to work it into the proposed because we got it so late because we had to get everything to you guys by Thursday. And so between this and the final budget, we'll work in that change there. So you guys can see that and we'll have the numbers for that. And then pay plan updates, we did those both for civil service, which is going to be your police and fire, and also your non-civil service employees. So we looked at every single pay study or pay plan that we had for all of our employees. Just a few definitions. Operations and maintenance, some people call it M&O. It's really technically called O&M. That's what we operate with. That's what we provide services with. Interest and sinking fund is your debt payments. That's the number, the INS fund, or the INS number cannot change. So all of our debt payments that we owe, we have to pay those debts. We can't move those around or anything else. So that's what stays stable with your tax rate. And both of those, the O&M rate and the INS rate, make up your tax rate total.
Wait, it stays stable with the tax rate?
The interest and sinking fund, that's the only thing that stays stable. The O&M can move, and then the bottom number can move.
The amount stays stable, but it's not linked to the tax rate.
Well, it is. Yeah, it's a piece of the tax rate.
The tax rate funds it, but I mean the budget itself is what's fixed, right?
The budget itself, yes, that's correct, but not the rate. So it depends on what payments we have to make. Yes, you're correct, but that's the only number that cannot move. We can move the O&M and we can move the total tax rate, but we cannot move by state law. We cannot move that interest and sinking fund. So whatever we owe for that year, we've got to fund it. So that that INS rate will change. Yes, based on what we owe. That's correct. Yes. So the budget does stay the same. Yes.
I forgot to turn it on.
Okay, so in looking at this with our certified TAV, 1 cent on the tax rate is going to be $264,874. That's assuming a 99% collection rate. Last year, that's compared to $244,422. Since our TAV went up, then also that number will go up. Just a few property tax definitions. The no new revenue rate is going to be your calculation that's based upon new valuations that gives the city the exact dollars in revenue as it generated in the previous year. That's excluding new housing, okay? So this is just what's on the current tax rolls, the same amount of revenue that you would get. So, and so basically what you'd collect the same tax revenue as last year, which was fiscal year 22, using this year's appraised values. So as those values go up, I have a slide that'll show you that next. Based on that no new revenue rate calculation, there's some truth in taxation state laws that we have to post. So if your proposed rate is equal to or less than your no new revenue rate, you don't have to post anything. If your proposed tax rate is greater than your no new revenue rate, then there's some notices and public hearings that are required, which Carol's office is helping us with. And there are some exceptions for smaller cities, which we don't fall into, or districts like water districts and things like that that don't have to post. So that bottom line there is the no new revenue rate is 0.517226, or a little over 6 cents under the proposed 5789 tax rate, which is equal to about 1.6 million in revenue. That 517,226 no new revenue rate, when we were doing our calculations, we did not include in those calculations all the new, oh, you're changing on me, Carol, on the other one. We did not include all the new exemptions that we got. So that was our mistake when we made the calculation. So that's why we got 0.56, because our numbers were higher. When it came out to all the new homestead that you guys approved, the 10%, and also the tax freeze for the 65, that took off about a little over 90 million in the TAV. So that was quite a big chunk there. So that's why that number is so different. So we just miscalculated. That's why I don't like to talk about it too much before the appraisal district, because they have all the information. We just have bits and pieces of it. So anyway, so that is the.
What did that equate to in actual dollars for us? 500,000 for the.
For the 10% exemption, it was a little over $500,000. Yeah, so it was a little over 500,000. I don't know the answer on the freeze. I can't remember.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact number on the freeze. I'd have to go back and look at that, Mayor.
Okay.
So. Okay. Oh, went the wrong way. There we go.
Between the 10% exemption. You said between the 10% exemption and the 65 and over freeze, that's about 90 million in TAV?
90 million, they call it value loss.
Right.
That was taken off of the TAV. That's correct. That's right. That's everything on value loss on that calculation. So yes, that's correct. Which we hadn't had either one of those in the past to calculate. So that was our mistake. This is just shows the effect of the appraised value versus the no new revenue rate. So obviously, as your appraised value goes up, your no new revenue rate goes down, which makes sense, and vice versa. As your appraised values go down, your no new revenue rate will go up. And then also just kind of the goal is there to balance those two out, which I don't know with the market the way it is. That's not something we have control over. So. Just some ad valorem tax rate history. If you'll see, this is the tax rate history since 2009. Back in 2009, it was 0.71 per 100 valuation. So starting in about 2017 is when the council began kind of lowering those values. It went from 689, and then you'll see last year's at 589 on the far right. And then 2022, that's the proposed at 5789. So just a little view of a history there. And then this is just your tax rate versus your no new revenue rate. So you're going to see in the blue line is going to be your no new revenue rate. And then the green line is going to be the adopted, or as in 2022, the proposed tax rate. So just a little visual there. You'll see in 2018, the council actually approved a tax rate that was below the no new revenue rate. So we were able to do that back in 2018. And then voter approval rate. So that's the two big tax rates. So this allows us to raise the same amount for operations and as in the prior year, plus a 3.5% increase. I don't know if you remember I think has it been 4 years ago now that the legislature changed that? It used to be 8%, but now we can only raise 3.5%. And this excludes new, includes only the operations portion, does not include the debt portion in that. The debt service portion of the overall rate may rise as high as necessary. So if you wanted to pay more of your debt off, then you certainly could. That would be up to council. And then also taxpayers can petition for a voter approval tax rate election if the city proposes an increase over the voter approval rate.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So how do you break down the tax rate between the two parts of the budget when it comes to this 3.5%? So how do you attribute? Do you just
operations only?
Is it 3.5% of only the operations budget?
Yes, only the M&O portion.
Right, but then that feeds into a tax rate, which is what actually triggers that.
Yes, that is correct. So our voter approval rate, if we were to raise that, is 0.606295.
Okay, great. That's where I was going.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's our voter approval rate. So if we go over or propose a tax rate over that, then that's when it could trigger an election for the voters.
Would you say the number again, please?
0.606295.
Great.
And you'll see a lot of different ones, but for us, the council approved, it had to be 10, 15 years ago, where the sales tax can offset some of that property tax. So that calculation, our sales tax is calculated in that as well for that voter approval rate. Because without that portion, then our voter approval rate, I think it was like, I want to say, I have it here, but it was like 90 something, but we include the sales tax in that calculation, and it offsets some of that property tax since we do so well. And council approved that, I think it was a while ago. So that factors into it too, and I can show you that if that's getting in the weeds, so I apologize.
Well, that's actually an interesting thing to know, though, because the thing that I think most voters are concerned with is how much is coming out of my pocket to fund this new budget, right?
Correct.
And if you can show how much of it is actually being funded by sales tax versus property tax.
Yeah. I think sales tax is over higher than property taxes now, when we get to that slide.
This year it passed that, didn't it?
Yeah, this year it did. It's been
Yeah.
really close, and it's been about 50-50, but this year sales tax actually passed it. So it's funding it more and more. Okay, understanding your
Did you have
property
a
tax.
question?
It's fine.
Oh, we're out in the hall.
Now it's off.
Now it's off. Okay. So this is just an understanding that obviously this is last year's tax. Everybody's in the process of approving a tax rate, but this to the far right just gives you a % of your total tax bill. So if you live in the city limits, you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4 different taxes that you'll receive. 47% of that's going to be the ISD, 25% is going to be the city, 18% will be county, and then 10% for the hospital for a total. So you're paying $2.37 on your per 100 valuation on your tax bill if you live in the city limits. And then here is our breakdown of the city. This is compared 21-22 to 22-23. There's the certified net taxable. That's that $2.5 billion there that I talked about for the 9.3% change. So that went up to $2.7 billion. That 2.7 takes out all of that 90 million that I talked about as well for all the exemptions that you guys have approved the last couple of years. The new taxable value, that's where I was talking about last year, it was at 50 million. So this is everything new that's gone on the tax roll. This year it's about 107 million for a 113% increase. There's the tax rate at 589 that we had that you guys approved last year, and then obviously the 5789 is proposed. So that's just a small decrease of 1.71%. The no new revenue rate went from 0.577 to 0.517, so that's about a 10% decrease. Obviously that's because the appraised values went up. And then also the M&O tax rate, this is the maintenance and operations, went from 32 cents to 36 cents for a 9.65% increase. And then the INS tax rate, which is our debt. So we paid off a couple of things. We restructured our debt for the $50 million street bond and also for the $50 million COs for the water. We pay interest only on those, I know, and then so next year those will hit our INS tax rate, so that number will go back up to about between 23 and 26%. But this year it went down 16%. I just do this every year. So on a $200,000 home, your daily property taxes, with a lot of assumptions, is going to be 3.17 for city. Just for city, this is just for city taxes. So it's going to cost you $3.17 per day. You can compare that to some of the other things that are up there, your electric bill, which is really high right now, maybe your auto loan, cell phone bill. What do you get for that? So you get police services, you get fire, you get public safety, education, you get your ISO rating, you get library services, you get senior center programs and equipment, roadway infrastructure projects, sidewalks, software, economic development programs, parks, events downtown, things like that. So all that you get for that $3.17. And then here's your daily property tax cost. So that $3.17 that's funded by property tax is broken down. So $1.36 goes to public safety, which includes police and fire. You've got, let's see, your next biggest one is going to be your debt at 67 cents over there. And then you've got general government, which is all the finance, city secretary, city manager, all the administrative departments. And then you've got public works and community development, culture, recreation, down at the bottom there. And then we always do this to our comparison in our competitive cities. So this chart, it's the same three charts, but this one's sorted by the actual tax rate. So we're 7th amongst all these, and these are tax rates from last year. And I know the population numbers, that's off of citydata.com. That's not actual census numbers. So those might be a little bit different, but they're close. And so we're about 7th for city tax rate. And then you look at the next one, we're sitting at number 11 for population. And then on this one, median household income, we're sitting at 13 compared to all our comparison and our competitive cities.
The tax rates in these charts are 2021?
Correct, yes. Yeah, because not all the cities have approved their new tax rate yet. I'm sure some of them have, but not all of them. And if they have approved them, they're not published.
Excuse me for interrupting. I'm just curious why Royce City isn't included in these numbers.
Because they were not our comparison city. And in the past, they really haven't been our competitive city. So when we did, what was that, like 4 years ago, we did some comparison and instead of just comparing to our comparison, for the police study, we picked out some competitive cities, kind of people that we were losing folks to. That wasn't happening back then, so we just named them as competitive cities. They're not officially competitive cities. We do compare, when we're talking about our pay plan and things like that, we do compare those to Royce City now. But in the past, we just really, we weren't losing people to them. So we really didn't compare them. So
I would think though they'd moved into that envelope now.
Yeah, probably. You're probably correct. So we can add them definitely.
Just curious. Thank you.
We have Rockwall, Heath, and Rockwall and Heath in there as well. So yeah, they would be a good one to add in the future. They weren't officially added, so we just didn't.
Yeah, thank you.
We just hadn't looked down, but we can certainly.
I have a question, another question.
Okay.
So on this chart here, you've got Rockwall, Heath as, I guess, competitive cities.
Correct.
That are close by, and they have pretty low tax rates by comparison. 0.35 and 0.34, let's say.
Yeah.
How much of those cities' budgets or revenues come from sales taxes? Do you know that offhand?
I don't know off the top of my head.
That's a good question.
Yeah, not off the top of my head, I don't
Good
know.
question.
Rockwall has a lot of industry. I would say Heath's probably, if you look at their population, they're at 9,000, but then you also look at their median income. So they're probably more of a bedroom community. Rockwall has a lot of industry out in that, that industrial park out there that Rockwall has. So.
And certainly a lot of retail.
And a lot of retail. So, I'd have to go look at. I've never compared that before because they were just way out of our league.
I think
as
that
far
would
as
be a
sales
useful
tax.
number to know, and I guess anybody could look.
Yeah.
But that would be a useful thing to know.
Okay.
Like some of the questions we get as council people is, why is our rate so much higher than Rockwall's? And,
To see how theirs compare.
Yeah, I think this could be part of the
Okay.
answer to that.
Okay. Yeah, certainly we could. Royce City.
Well, when people start comparing tax rates, it's like comparing apples to oranges.
Understood.
Yeah, it's hard.
We have things that other people don't have. We have a library, we have a golf course, we maintain other things. Other cities have other things, and so when you compare tax rates, it's almost folly to do that.
Right.
You have to look at the appraised value and look at what's going on. I know you know that, but
Right. No, it's a good
I wish
point.
our people knew that.
Right. It's a good
Yeah,
point.
and you look at Garland, look how high their tax rate is. But you would
Right.
think people go to Garland to shop or they have industry, but like you said, I don't know. It's all on what you're looking at and what you're comparing to. So, it could be several different factors. Even look at Rowlett. They've got decent population. They've got a median, pretty high household income, but their tax rate's still pretty high. So how do you explain that one? I don't know.
When someone says the tax rate has to be X, relative to what?
Right.
What are you going to take out of the budget? If you want to reduce the tax rate, what do you want to do? Make a suggestion. You can't just throw a dart and say it needs to be 55 cents.
Right.
Yeah, their
Yeah.
debt rates.
That's true. Could
Yeah,
be- that
plays
could be a
big
part
time.
of it.
Tyler's a good example of that,
They have 0 on their INS rate.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't have any debt that they're funding. That's all their M&O right there is at 26 cents.
One day, when we get caught up on infrastructure,
Yeah, one day.
when GP retires.
Yeah, it's going to take that long for sure. Yeah, and then I think I just read where Wiley, they've approved, I think their no new revenue rate, but they might be paying off some debt too and still be able to do the things they need to do. So it all depends on structure, capital-wise, where you're at, infrastructure. You know, I would think places like your Rowletts or your Wileys or those kind of places, they can't grow anymore. You know, there's nowhere else. They're landlocked, you know, so they're just updating all their new stuff. So, you know, you look at all those different things. So it could be a lot of those different things that you could look at. So, let's see. Okay, we talked about population. We talked about median household income. And then this one is a little bit, this is a breakdown of every single fund for our fund balance. Oh, Carol's changing it for me. Hold on. There we go. She got the wrong mouse, sorry. So summary of fund balance. So this is just a breakdown. Over to the right, you'll see your calculated target fund balance. Those are the only funds by policy that we have a policy that states we have to have a certain amount of fund balance in there, which includes our general fund, our debt service fund, our water wastewater fund, and also is airport. Yeah, I'll make sure I see it correctly. It's a little bit smaller up there.
5.507 is 17% of the.
Of the expenses, that is correct. Right. And our target can, and it's in your budget book too, but if you want to read through the shortened policy is in there, but it can be anywhere from 15 to 20%.
Right.
Yes, so that's the council's target there. If it gets to 25%, then we have to do something to lower that. If it gets below 15%, then we have to do something to fix that as well. But right now, what's in your proposed is at 17% of that $32,297,953. That's what that is. That's our target. So what our fund balance ended up being was about $8,754 over that target. So, and as your expenses change, so you lower your expenses, then your target moves too. So when you think about that. So overall there at the bottom, beginning fund balance is at $44 million. Ending fund balance for every fund that we have is about $45 million. And then this is just a breakdown of every single fund is across the top there, each column. And then when you look at your rows, that's your breakdown of your revenues and your expenses and what categories those fall into. So those can fall anywhere from property taxes, sales taxes, building and land rentals, intergovernmental revenue, cost allocations, library fines, all that stuff. The majority of it's going to be in your general fund on your revenues and expenses, but you can also see your proprietary funds are going to be your water, wastewater, your golf funds, anything that's run like a business, like an enterprise fund. That's going to be those. Your debt service funds is second. Your special revenue funds, those are like our TERS fund, seizure funds, things like that have special provisions that we can only spend certain things on it. And then far right over there is our actual capital funds. And then this is a total proposed expenses. So this chart that you see right here for the total expenses that total out over there, this is every single fund in a pie chart. So you'll see 23% of that's going to be spent on public safety, 21% on public works because that includes water and sewer fund as well. You've got 15% debt service. Services that we provide is at about 13%, and then you have a bunch of little smaller ones there. And then same for the total proposed revenues. So your sales and income at 29%, that's going to be mostly your water and wastewater funds that are coming in there. You've got your property taxes at 20%, and then your sales taxes, see your sales tax there are 14%. And that's overall. So when you're looking at this one, the sales tax doesn't surpass it because some of your property taxes that go into your TERS fund, we don't figure into our general fund. So when you're looking at the overall picture, actually property taxes are still above sales tax. And then this is just a fund balance summary of your general fund. So I know this is kind of small for everyone to see out there, but this is just the projected, this is what we're proposing at the end of fiscal year 2023, or fiscal year 2023, which would be September 30th, is that 5.5 million. And then that's just a breakdown of the status down there. So the difference down there, budgeted revenues at 29 million, budgeted expenditures at 31 million. Thankfully, we had enough in our fund balance there, so we were able to work in that 17%. And so down at the bottom, you'll see the minimum fund balance for our 17% target. There's that little over 5 million, and then we're about 8,700 over. So then at the very, very, very bottom, that's our actual budgeted that we're proposing with this tax rate. And and this will all change. As you guys change things, all of this changes. Expenses change. Revenues pretty much stay the same. And then this is going to be, the auditors call it, in the accounting world calls it the retained earnings, because it's all your proprietary funds, your enterprise funds. Water, wastewater, utility capital, airport capital, internal service funds are going to be all our fleet, MIS, all those funds. And then you have your golf fund and then the sanitation fund. So all those that act as business type funds, and they're not backed by taxes. That's what this picture is. So you can see that we're in good shape on each one of those funds. And then this is our debt outstanding as of September 30th of 2022. So right now, so if you guys sell anything in the future, then obviously this will change. But as of right now, this is what our debt is. You'll see GO bonds there at the top. Those are the ones you guys sold, council sold last year for that's the road bonds. And then the certificates of obligation are going to be for the raw water line and the EOC and the radio project. So that's the 64 million there. And then those are just some older debts. GO and refunding bonds, that includes the Stonewall and sale and some refunding in there. Then there's some older ones. And then there's some COs down at the bottom. 2019, those included all the updates to the water treatment plant that were done 3 years ago now. And so all those updates are almost done, and that's why our capacity's been able to go from 11 to 14%. And then there's some other ones filtered in there, and you can see there's those two right there in the middle. Those are the ones that will pay off next year. So that will affect our debt payment, but then we have some more debt coming on. So those will go off, but some more debt will come on to the books.
So 11 million, roughly, well, let's see, it's almost 12 million.
Yes, yeah.
And then how much is coming on in the next year?
We've got these two payments up here, and I can't remember what the principal breakdown of those were. It was like, it's like 3 million, between the two of them, I think it's like a $3 million payment. So roughly, roughly about $1.5 million goes off, and then 3 million goes on. So that INS rate will go up from that 21 cents because those two 2021 bonds come on right there. Yes, this one right here? Yeah. Yeah, so you'll see this one, it's roughly the same shape as it has been in the past. It's just pushed out a little bit further. So back in 2023, I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago, before we sold those 3 or 4 issuances, then, you know, this peak right here was backed up, I think, to like 2026. Now it's just been pushed back a little bit further, but it's roughly the same shape that it's always been. And this is if you don't issue any additional bonds during the year. So that'll be completely up to council. And then overall personnel changes that you'll see. It's okay. It's okay. Oh, where did it go? Where did my pictures go? Uh-oh. Now it's gone. You're gonna have to open it. You'll have to open it back up again, just off of your desktop. I wouldn't save those changes. Yeah, there we go. Oh, too far. One back. There we go. Okay, so overall personnel changes. So we added 3 patrol officers in addition to what we already have for a little over $300,000. 2 communication operators in the dispatch, volunteer rescue coordinator at animal control, a recruiting coordinator at HR, an IT technician. We added that. We have 2 2 of our people in IT that are retiring within 3 years. Fleet oil and a lube tire technician, we're going to add that person in there to help with the maintenance instead of depending on all the oil change places around here. And then utilities workers in the water wastewater fund, we added 2 there. Golf course manager trainee, we added that one there because we have somebody that's been there for a really long time that's close to retirement as well. Adult services librarian, they asked to go ahead and add an additional person, but what we did instead was took 2 of the part-time people that are value employees that we wanted to keep that we're looking for full-time. We upgraded those to full-time positions to keep those people. And also to help instead of adding another person, why don't we just go ahead and take them to part-time. Under building attendant, our building attendant that's currently part-time is close to retirement as well. Once that employee retires, we plan to turn that position, hopefully if you guys approve, to a full-time position. We included in here a 5% merit increase. So this is the total cost over the general fund and the water and wastewater fund. So it's a little over $1 million for a 5% merit increase. The pay plan updates that we did in the general fund and the wastewater fund were a little over $600,000. So that's when we took and we looked at each department's, whether we added a position, we changed the mid-range or the minimums and the maximums. We compared them to those comparison and competitive cities and went through that whole process. We probably started that in March or April and worked through with each department on what could help them. We looked at positions that were difficult to hire and what we needed to do to maybe make those more attractive and things like that. So that all that total cost there was $607,000. And then we continued on with the sign-on, retention, and spot bonuses. That's been a very successful program for us, especially the spot bonuses. That's been very well received by the employees, and it's been really good for us. The sign-on bonuses we've used a couple of times. That hasn't been as attractive as we thought it would be, but hopefully we can gain some more traction with this in the second year. And then retention bonuses, that's worked well as well. So we'd like to continue on in that project and keep putting that $100,000 into that project every year so that we can build that fund up when we need it. And then,
Summer, do you have, just quickly, do you have a total for the personnel changes that involve hiring new people versus the changes that involve increases in pay?
Oh, like,
I just, at a glance, I wrote it down as 1.3 million for new people and 1.7 for increases in pay.
that's probably, yeah, I mean, if you're
That's
talking
just at a
about
glance
over
when
all
I'm,
the
like, rounding.
over all the funds, yeah, I didn't break it down like that, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, I mean, 3, 4, 5, 6. Without the merit or with the merit? You're just talking about personnel changes versus
Bottom 3 versus everything else.
versus everything
That's what I was
else.
talking about, yeah.
107,000.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, probably. I mean,
Okay.
that's probably pretty good.
Pretty close.
Yeah, that's probably pretty close. But that, the majority of that's going to be the merit increases when you're looking at that. So, and then patrol and dispatch, they're the other kind of big piece of that, the top list. So, yes. So that in total we added 12 positions. So, or we're requesting to add 12 positions is what we're doing, which doesn't include 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, it doesn't include those part-time people to full-time people. So that's 12 new additional people. And then we're requesting 3 to go from part-time to full-time. And then this just gives you a history of the salary adjustments, what we've done in the past. So 18-19 was 3% merit. 3% merit, 1% COLA. 19-20 was a 2% merit. 2021 was the COVID year, so we could probably take that one out of we didn't do anything there because we were unsure of what was going to happen at that point. We didn't know how it was going to affect everything. And then last year, you guys approved a 5% merit, and we're recommending again, along with the pay plan update, so that everything would be updated with the pay plan, and then on top of that, they would have the chance to get a 5% merit.
Didn't we also talk about a COLA increase?
For employees?
Oh, and that's for retirees.
That's for retirees, that's correct. Yes, we did talk about that. And then staffing plan, this is just give you guys a history of what we've done. We started with police, did year 1 and year 2. Next year we concentrated on fire, did year 1, year 2. Then did the employee pay plan, which is non-civil service, sorry about that. And then we had to skip a year in there because of COVID. We didn't do anything there. Last year we were able to do year 2. I think year 1 of employee pay plan, we were able to get everybody in the 50%. Last year we adjusted some more. This year we looked at it again. The market's just changing so quickly, we have to keep up. So the plan going forward is update and review all pay plans every single year to see if we're competitive and where we need to be. And then keeping in philosophy is pay as you go. Here's what we left in.
When you lose employees, I know you do exit interviews, are you finding out that are they leaving for other pay or for other reasons?
I don't know where she
Better
is.
pay?
Most of the time, it's better pay. She's coming if she wants to answer. If she wants to answer it, yeah, she can answer more to that. You know, we've had some people that have left for better pay and then end up coming back because, you know, the saying the grass isn't always greener. So there's been some of those too. So I think it's a handful. Do you want to answer that question?
They do leave for more pay. We have had people that have left and have gotten promises made to them, and when the promises didn't deliver with the new job, they've come back. So typically it is for better pay. The majority, yeah.
The majority is better pay.
Now that's what they tell us when they leave, and typically what I've learned through my days in HR is they'll tell you whatever, you know, they want to tell you to be able to leave quickly. They don't want to get down into the meat of what they might be leaving for. They'll tell you that they're leaving for pay, but it could be their supervisor. But what we hear is it's for more pay.
Well, thank you.
And so what we've left in for pay as you go, the fire truck replacement, that we're on that program. You guys approved a lease this year, so we'll continue that. I think that's been a very successful program, and it works very well. We've included 12 emergency response vehicles on the patrol side. That's in our enterprise lease. PD body armor and rifle/pistol light replacements. Drainage improvements and sidewalk improvements, we've left that in there for $300 and $250. And then sports park shade structures, we've left that. That comes out of the hotel motel fund, but we funded that. This is year 6 of this, so this will complete the orange field. So then all the fields will have shade structures at that point. Park planning, we left that in there, about $87,000 with all the park development fees that we have coming up. We really wanted to engineer and make sure we were doing the right thing in the park, so we wanted some help with that. Upgrading the library roof, we're not completely replacing it, but that has been a problem since I've been here since 2015, and we've just been patching it and patching it and patching it. So I think now is the time. I know we didn't have a rainy season this spring, but when we do, it causes a lot of problems and a lot of issues. So we're going to upgrade that. That's about $300,000. And then the InterGov software upgrade for Community Development and Public Works. That's a big one. It's going to cost us a lot of money, but it will finally shoot those 2 departments into the right century. We do a lot of stuff by paper in those 2 departments, and we shouldn't need to, and we shouldn't have to. And so to be able to serve the citizens with online stuff, on the community development side, public works stuff where they can do stuff out in the field with iPads and those kind of things, we really need to upgrade. InterGov will interface with Encode, our financial software. It'll interface with our court software, which is Encode. And so it'll do a lot of things that we can't do right now, just because our system, MyGov, just can't do it at this point. So it'll really just update us, and I think it's been long overdue. It's been needed since I've gotten here. We'll continue our computer replacements. We put $50,000 in for that every year just to keep up with that infrastructure. HVAC replacements, we'll continue that. We've been systematically replacing those, trying to be more proactive than reactive in replacing those before it's July and they go out and we have to scramble to find money for those. So that's been a really successful program. And then our kennel replacements, we're hoping that we can replace 10 again. We replaced 10 this year. Cost of things have gone up a little bit, but we'll continue to replace those until they're all replaced. And then downtown lighting, we want to continue to upgrade those and turn those into solar lights, like we did along in front of Land and Winery and those places. And it looks really good. And
I've
then,
got a question about all that,
Yeah.
if I could.
yes,
So we have this fire truck, pay-as-you-go, the brush truck, the fill station, various other items, armored vehicle, and the library roof replacement upgrade. And the life of those items is, I don't know what the life is. I don't know if this even makes sense. But I see us as pay-as-you-go. I see we're putting money in, we're escrowing money for a future payment.
correct.
Payment. And the value of that money, the purchasing power of that money is going down every day now with inflation. So would it make sense to bundle some of these items together into a small CO bond? I don't know what it is. I think I just named maybe $1 million and stuff. I didn't include the library roofing, but would it make sense to bundle some of those into a single deal and look at it?
I wouldn't I mean, if we were gonna do anything like fire truck replacement, I would either wanna go, you can't go the leasing route. I would rather go the leasing route because those just don't have the life. I mean, the library roof, probably upgrade that. That's probably another 15 years before you'd have to replace it. But when you're going to bonds, I mean, you're gonna go at least 20 years, 20 to 30 years. And that was a problem, before. You don't wanna, debt fund something that's, for 30 years when it only has a life of 15 years. So that's why we went away from that with the fire trucks in particular.
Okay.
You could look at bank financing, because they do anywhere from 10 to 15 years. So that is an option if we wanted to do that. Luckily in this last fire truck, we were able to do that with the leasing of it, so we're just paying the lease payments on it now. So we were able, and that's because of the lead times really. But I mean, we could look at a few of those
Well,
things.
could we look at a couple of those options, maybe just to reduce our capital outlays? You might be able to take $1 million or $1.5 million out.
I mean,
of the-
really, because
out of
you're
the
really
budget. I don't know
looking
what you
at,
can,
yeah, I mean, you're looking at really the fire truck, the library roof, really.
How long
Those-
will that fill station last?
The which one?
The fill station, it's $150,000. The fire, the portable fill
Oh,
station.
the portable fill station. That was something that
There, you got an answer back there.
10 to 15 years. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you wanted,
Well, I mean,
we didn't include that in this list.
No, I know.
'Cause
Okay,
that was
or the
pri-
brush
that-
truck, for example.
The brush truck we're actually going to purchase probably using TIFMAS funds. So we'll be able to buy that one with cash, so we won't have to wait on that one. So we'll be able to do that one with TIFMAS funds because they've been deployed.
Well, I'd like to see us get all
So-
these same things, but I'd like to look at, I don't know if it's creative or not, but I'd like to look at some options for funding those, which might take a little pressure off the budget.
Okay. I mean, we can certainly look at it. I mean, like I said, from this list, really what you're looking at is really the fire truck and the library roof. Everything else is,
Yeah, it's short term.
like the Intergov software, that's a yearly thing.
Yeah.
We could probably do that
And
through
there's
that.
not a lot of expense there either,
No.
relatively speaking.
Park planning is about 87,000. The shade structures are 90,000, which we have the cash to do that one in the hotel motel fund. The sidewalk and drainage improvements, those are just, the 300,000 and the 250 that we included. So that's an every year thing. So I wouldn't want to put that in there. The body armor and the light replacements, that's not even worth it because we
No.
can, those
Well,
are
maybe
so
it's not
small.
worth looking at that. I just
So
thought
we can,
maybe
we can certainly look at some of the things that we didn't include in there if we wanted to, maybe bank finance those or, some other short-term financing or leasing options. I know it's hard. We've talked with Jeremy about leasing, but it's just so hard with those fire trucks because they're so custom. You can't just lease them and,
Yeah.
And we've looked at leasing equipment too from an equipment standpoint because I looked at a list that our fleet supervisor just gave us and we have about a little over $3 million in equipment. So we're talking tractors and dump trucks and things like that we need replaced right now that we can't necessarily fit all that in the budget. So we're looking at leasing options there.
Good.
And maybe some short-term financing from that standpoint, because that's just the equipment.
Right.
That doesn't include vehicles. So
So you're saying that it would be easier to leave it as is and not bundle it, or try the bundle? As
I mean, we
Mayor said?
could. That would be up to you guys, because you guys would have to approve the financing. I could give you options. So off of this list that we're just talking about on this right here, really the fire truck and the library roof and maybe the Intergov software would be the two things, or the three things that I would include. Everything else is either so small it's not worth financing,
How about that new police vehicle?
That's a big one. We didn't include it in this proposed budget. So, I mean, that's one of those big ticket items
It's
that
a big one.
it's a huge one, yeah. So we were able to do the one last year, but then we haven't, we didn't fit in the big police vehicle. So if that's something you guys wanted to do, then we can certainly look at those options.
Bearcat armored?
The Bearcat armored vehicle.
Oh,
So
that's not included in it.
that is not included, no.
Okay, well, I included that in my question.
Right, and like the brush truck we didn't include because we were going to purchase it in TIFMAS funds, so that wouldn't take anything off of the current budget. But this is what's in the proposed budget.
Okay.
So not necessary. So that's why I wanted you guys to see what was requested and what was proposed and what we were
Okay.
able to fit in there.
Got it.
So
you.
if you wanted to fit anything else in, then we could certainly look at those options, but we need to look at them pretty quickly if that's something you guys want to do. As far as the Bearcat vehicle, because that's a big ticket item. That's a really big ticket item.
It's been on the list for a while.
It's been on the list for a while.
How much was that?
350.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost 400, I think, from
it was
last year to this year. 300 to 400, 350 to 400, I would
It was shown
say.
at 327. in our last
327?
budget. Yeah.
Well, and if you wait any longer, it'll get more expensive. We know that
Yeah,
for
well,
sure.
sure.
We know that for sure. It will get more. Yeah, but that is not in here. That's correct. And that portable fill station that you mentioned, it's not in this budget either.
Oh, it's not?
No, we weren't able. We didn't put it in there because when we did our priority list back in February and March, I think staff worked through it. We sat in here and worked through each one. It didn't jump to the top of the priority list
Okay,
based on how we score those with our matrix
okay,
within staff. So we didn't include it in there.
okay.
So if you want a listing, what I could do for you is I could give you a listing of all the capital that we included, all the capital that was requested, and then you guys can see, and then you guys can have that. And I can send that to you guys in this next week, and then you guys can see what you want and what you don't want to include in there and that thing. So we can certainly do that. That'd be easy enough because we have it all listed on our 5-year plan, and it's in your budget book on the 5-year plan.
Some
It's
of
just
those
pushed out
items-
till next year.
Some of those items like the armored vehicle and the fill station, brush truck, those things could be included in a bundle.
Yeah, they certainly could.
Financed, right?
Yeah, those are big ticket items, so those certainly would be worth it. And that, I'm sure that armor's vehicle probably has at least a 20-year life, I would
Well, I
think,
don't
because you
think
don't
when
use
I-
it very often.
With my initial question, I understood that those weren't included in this budget, so,
Okay.
sorry.
But yeah, I can give you a side-by-side comparison of the capital that was included and capital that was requested. I can
think
do
I'd
that.
like to see some options, and I'd like to include some of these requested items in a possible thing where we maybe do some short-term financing and see what the impact that is, and see what we can do. Maybe we can get some of this.
Is the idea there to use borrowed dollars instead of inflationary dollars?
Yeah, well, the way I see it is we're funding against this, and we're losing. The same thing we did with the street bond. We finally realized that we weren't making any progress with street improvement funds. We were losing that. But the
Losing
$2
more
million
value to inflation.
Yeah, the $2 million would amortize $50 million. We could freeze our costs now and continue to do that. So it made perfect sense. And this is kind of the same thing, only it's much smaller scale. I don't know if we can find $1.5 million or $2 million even in stuff that we could do that for, but if we could, it might be, we may be able to get some, yeah. But, well, I mean, money wasn't worth anything for a long time from an interest standpoint.
Yeah. It's getting back there.
Huh?
It's getting closer to that now, isn't it? Well, certainly when your costs go up 40% on a project,
Well, yeah, I mean.
Just
And
from
I'm just
one
concerned that
year.
some of these items, you're talking about, this is at 327, but you're saying you priced the armored vehicle at 400. What's it gonna be next year? So we could
450.
freeze those costs
Yeah.
now if we're gonna need that item.
Yeah.
It's more expensive to hold your cash than to spend it.
Yeah,
it
certainly.
is.
Agreed. And you're not going to make much on that cash. Not this
Well,
day.
It's losing value,
That's what I
purchasing
mean.
value.
Right.
Yeah, it's
It's
losing
not
value
you're making
fast,
anything on
faster
it.
and
You're
faster.
losing-
Right.
It's losing purchasing power
Right.
today.
Okay, so other items included in the budget, the $50,000 in the tourism funding, which we left in there at the same number. That's what Dole has his tourism board, that he'll go to his tourism board. Folks will apply for that. They'll make a recommendation to council, but we left that number as a flat 50,000. That's what it was last year. Non-governmental funding, that's going to be the 47,000 that went before the subcommittee that they are going to recommend to the council. So that includes the 20,000 for senior center resource, the 20,000 for Keep Greenville Beautiful, which comes out of the sanitation fund, and then the 7,000 that belongs to the drug-free Greenville. So I want to make sure I get all those correct. So that totals out to 47,000 over all funds. And then general fund capital, this is just our transfer to CIP. As you'll see last year this is to fund our capital. Went from 2.5 million to about 1.8, for a 25% decrease there. Utility capital went from a 1.3 to about 1.8, so there's a little bit that we could fund with that utility capital. And then at the vehicle replacement, you'll see we didn't transfer to CIP because that vehicle replacement fund has started self-sustaining itself with our lease options. So we're selling all those cars at auctions as soon as we can get them, and it's self-sustaining itself. So we're not having to transfer much anymore from any additional from the general fund. So it's...
In other words, the money you get from selling the vehicles is enough to pay for the next lease.
Correct, for any increase in lease that we've got. Next year will be year 4. That's when we'll really start seeing that fund really take care of itself. And so it's really that lease program has worked out really well. And we're replacing, like I said, 12, and we're keeping up with our patrol cars, whereas it used to be 3 and 4 cars that we're replacing, but now.
So another way to understand that is after year 4, that fund won't even exist.
Well, it'll exist, but the vehicle fund? Yeah, because we leave everything in the vehicle fund, but the general fund, won't need the general fund anymore.
At all, right.
Yeah, it'll take care of itself. The only thing, well, we will need that fund because like the fire truck replacement, all that goes into that vehicle fund too.
Okay.
So we leave that fund where it's at. So it can, but it's in great shape, that vehicle fund replacement, and it just, all the lease stuff just keeps taking care of itself. So that's in really good shape. So that's why you'll see there's nothing transferred there. And then this is just an overall picture of capitals that's coming out of the general fund, the vehicle replacement, that's the total. So that includes all the fire truck and everything. Hotel motel fund, that's just shade structures. Water wastewater, that's 2 projects there off of Roy Warren and off of 1570. Airport fund, there's 262,000 in there. That's for some engineering, for some growth for the future. There wasn't quite enough to fund what we needed total, so we're going to let that fund build up a little bit and go ahead and have everything designed and shovel ready. And when that funding is there, then we can look at options to whether we bond fund any kind of airport projects or growth or anything like that. So that's mostly engineering. And we still have some drainage issues that we need to fix out at the airport, so we wanted to leave that fund balance where it was so that if we needed to fund any of that, then we certainly could. And then the MIS fund, that includes all the intergov, all the computer leases, all the server leases, all the software that we do, but that's going to be mainly the intergov included in there. And then I'll take any additional questions, any suggestions, anything that you guys would like to see differently. Like I said, we've got the August 23rd meeting where we can show you guys anything that you'd like to see. And of course, we can show you anything you want to see during the September 13th work session as well. We just need to know, this is y'all's budget. This is our recommendations. This is what we feel like the city needs. But this is for you guys to, go through and see what changes we need to make or what adjustments you think would be best.
Last year, I really liked the interactive spreadsheet you had where you
Okay.
could, so I think I'd like to see that as a next step.
Next step? Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
If we can, yeah. That was a great tool for
Yeah. Sorry.
helping us understand the budget, the implications of what we do. We can see it in real time. It's wonderful. So that's what I'd like to see. The next step.
GP said he could have that ready by next meeting for sure if you
I'd
want
like to be able to, as soon as you can have it ready, because that's something we could play with on our own as well, right?
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Because our next meeting is what, the 23rd?
Yes.
So yeah, I could have that ready for you sometime next week.
I'm interested in that in particular because I won't be here at the next meeting.
Oh, okay. Certainly, makes sense. And we can have it at the September 13th meeting too. If
We
you guys
did it
don't.
at the meeting where we set the tax rate also.
Yeah, we can have it then too as well if we
Last
needed
year.
to. And certainly, we can
We'll
send it
probably
since you
do it
won't be
this
here.
year, actually.
So, okay, well, we'll go from there. And if there's anything that you see while you guys are reading through that, please send me an email and say, or call me. Why did we do this? Why did we put in this? Why didn't we put in this from the presentation that you guys have seen, or, you know, what's the deal? We've gone back and forth. We didn't change much with what they requested on the on the M&O side. We really went back and forth on capital and personnel. Those were the two things we focused on. So everything else pretty much stayed pretty stable from what we did before, with the additions of those personnel and those kind of things. So if there's anything that you think of, just please call me, email me, and I'll be glad to answer it, or come into my office. This is your budget, so this is just our recommendations for that budget. So just please email me or call me, and we can work through whatever we need to work through. So thank y'all very much.
Thank
Summer,
you.
one quick question. Based on this, some recommendations that we received on the animal shelter business, has Brandon had any input on some changes maybe to his budget or proposed changes down at the animal shelter?
We included the volunteer rescue coordinator, so we included that in there. We did not include in the budget an outdoor area.
That's specifically what I was wondering.
Yeah,
about.
we didn't include it in there. It was requested. We have it on that sheet, so it'll be on that side-by-side sheet. So if that's something you guys wanted to include in there, then we certainly could include it, and you can see where it fits in. It was $289, I want to say, with turf and all that. So if that's something you guys wanted to invest in, then we certainly could do that. But we did not include it in this proposed budget. But but that's something you guys could certainly change, just like we didn't include the brush truck or the portable fuel station. So things like that. Those, and honestly, Terry, that wasn't on our priority list when we did the capital budgeting, so we threw it in there at the end. So, so we certainly could include it.
It was very recent, obviously. So.
Yeah, and it was pretty recent. So, but we did include the one person, and I don't know if there was any other, within his regular budget. I'm trying to think if there was any. Including, but we're replacing the kennels, but that's something that we've been doing and replacing those.
That's been ongoing.
Yeah, it's been an ongoing project that we've worked on. So I'm trying to think if there was anything in just his regular day-to-day operations that we made a substantial change, which I don't, as far as budget wise.
Right.
M&O went up a little bit just because of cost of food and vaccines and stuff.
Yeah, so we probably did some more vaccines.
That is an item you could bundle in this bundle we're talking about.
Well, that's exactly
You certainly
where I was
could,
going.
certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you wanted to. Yeah, and that's that side by side if you wanted to look at it. We'll include it in there because we had it on the departmental presentations. We didn't look at, having a vet on staff. We didn't, that got to be pretty expensive and a little bit more difficult, so we didn't include that in this proposed, but that's something if you guys wanted to look at, then you certainly could as a council. So,
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank y'all.
Okay. The next thing on the work session agenda is a water rate study. And GP, you going to introduce our guest?
Yes, I'm probably going to butcher how do you pronounce your last name?
Eckert.
Eckert, all right. This is Chris Eckert with New Gen Strategies and Solutions, and who we've paired with. And really, I think we've been working since the fall on putting together this study, so they're here to present those results. And he's going to do a great job. It's a great presentation.
And I think if you want to follow along, this presentation is in our Dropbox. Is that right?
That's correct.
So, yeah, email in the Dropbox. So.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor Council. Chris Eckert with New Gen Strategies and Solutions. Pleasure to be with you this afternoon, here to report on the water and wastewater rate study that we've conducted. So hopefully, do I click the button to advance this? There we go. Perfect. Do I need to give you just a minute? Okay. Okay. Fantastic. So as we talk about the water and wastewater utility, you heard earlier the word enterprise fund, proprietary fund. I need you to remember that we are talking about a business. A water and wastewater utility is a business type activity of government. So when we're talking about a business, for a business to be successful, it must do three things. First and foremost, revenues have to match or exceed expenses. We've got to make sure our revenue stream is sufficient. Second thing we have to do is we have to make sure that we have sufficient reserves. We have to plan for a rainy day. I just came in from Mount Pleasant. It actually did rain out there today, believe it or not. So hopefully that's moving this direction. But it will start raining again, and when that happens, revenues fall. We have to have sufficient reserves to make sure that we can sustain our business. Third thing we have to do, we have to reinvest in the business. And we're going to be talking about that a lot today in terms of the needed capital improvements on your system. You have a lot of pipes, plants, pumps, people. You have to reinvest in your business. And we're at a point that we need to make some tough decisions about that reinvestment going forward. So while we sit here as a council tonight, you also sit as the board of directors. And so you're making some business decisions when we are looking at the water and wastewater utility this evening. So some key issues that are facing your business right now. As we have modeled your financial performance out going forward, taking into account the capital investment you need, it's our opinion that your rates, your pricing, your revenue stream is insufficient. You'll notice that bottom bullet there on the slide. Based on the information we receive from staff, we have $174 million in needed capital improvements on the water and wastewater system. And honestly, I think that number is potentially low. As you look at the impact of inflation, you see what all needs to be done, you see what's going on within the economy right now, that number's not going to go down. It's only going to go up as we go into the future. So please keep that in mind. Were we to go in and fund this capital based on the plan that we've put together, based upon our financial projections, through next year, you would have to draw down on that reserve balance that you just saw in the budget presentation. You would have to draw that down, and potentially you may even be in a negative cash position by the end of next year if you implemented all of that capital. So again, capital is a key driver when we are looking at the water and wastewater utility. We have a lot of needs on our system. As we look at how your pricing is put together, how your rates are structured, your water and wastewater rates, you have a typical two-part rate. There's a fixed charge, there's a variable charge. The fixed charge, everybody pays every month regardless of use. Then there's a variable charge that varies based on quantity of usage. So right now, when you look at that fixed charge, that meter charge, it does escalate based on the size of the meter, which is a good thing, but it's our opinion that that escalation may not be sufficient. There are certain standards that are promulgated by the American Water Works Association, and when you look at meters and the demand they can place on a system, that should set your pricing for those meters. So within our plan, within the rates that are in this presentation tonight, we've aligned with those AWWA standards. Also, as we've looked at the rates for your customers that are outside the city limits, typically we see those outside city limit customers charged as a multiplier or a ratio of those inside city limit customers. Over time, some adjustments have been made in your rate structure such that application, that proportion is not consistent in your rate structure across the board. So we're bringing some consistency to that within our rate plan. So just note that with regards to those outside city customers. Again, the last rate increase you had, October 21, that was a fairly minor increase. So there has been some rate action along the way. We're just to the point where we're looking that we really need some more sufficient, some larger rate action to get caught up to where we need to be, and then plan for that future capital investment. So with that, the chart that I'm going to show you on the screen right now, this is similar to the chart that you had earlier where you were looking at property taxes from comparable communities. Here you're looking at an average water and wastewater bill, average single-family residential customer. Here we're using 5,000 gallons of service. So if you averaged out usage over the year, it's going to be higher in the summer, lower in the winter. 5,000 gallons, that's your average single-family home. Note that you are at the bottom. Not only are you at the bottom, you're $8 lower than the lowest comparable provider. This is not necessarily where you want to be. You have been effective. You have been extremely cost effective in providing water and wastewater service. But remember all those capital improvements that we talked about. We are now to a point where we need to bring our rates up. We need to get comparable so that we can affect some of those capital improvements. We can begin to engage in some of those improvements. So again, just just how things are. It's where you sit right now. I would note this is not apples to apples. Just like your property tax is not apples to apples, this is not apples to apples. Every city is different. Some cities buy their water from, they buy treated water from wholesale providers. They send their wastewater to a wholesale provider for that wholesale provider to treat it. They may use property tax to subsidize their utility. There's all sorts of different circumstances out there. Any number of reasons this chart looks the way it does. So again, not apples to apples. We need to do what's right for our community. So I do want to emphasize that. The next series of charts you're going to see, this is what we have modeled out as far as your anticipated financial performance under our capital plan as we've looked out, taking into account the impact of inflation going forward. And there's 3 different charts on this screen. I'm going to start in the upper left-hand corner. This is that basic concept, revenues must match or exceed expenses. The red line, that's the projected revenue line under current rates. You can see it does go up because we have some growth built in. We are estimating there will be growth in the city. So that line does go up slightly. But those gray bars, that's the cost. That includes capital. Because the gray bar is above the red line, that means our expenses exceed our revenues. So we are not sufficient under current rates. The upper right-hand corner, what we're looking at there is a metric called debt service coverage. So the rating agencies, when they come and they look at you, if you're going to issue debt, they're going to look at your financial position. They want to make sure that you can meet your debt obligations, that you can pay those. So what they're going to do is look at your revenue stream. They're going to take out operations and maintenance expenses, and they're going to compare that net number to your debt service, your debt service principal and interest requirement. That amount must be equal to 1 or greater. If it's less than 1, there's not sufficient revenue to make that debt payment. But the debt rating agencies, they're looking for a cushion. They're looking for just a slight margin there so that they can be assured that you're going to be able to pay that debt long term. If there are fluctuations in weather, which lead to fluctuations in revenue, they want to make sure there's a little bit of margin, a little bit of cushion there. So that's the debt service coverage ratio. The middle box that you see there, that's fund balance. Again, it's our opinion, if you were to engage in the needed capital improvements but not adjust rates, that's all going to have to come out of reserves. You're going to have to pull that reserve balance down starting next year. Obviously, you wouldn't do that. You would just further delay those capital improvements. So again, that's financial performance under current rates. As we look at the capital improvement plan, what is it we're seeing in terms of needed capital improvement? That's the slide on the screen right now. 174 million, 173.6 if you don't want to round. You can see how that breaks out between water and sewer. More of the sewer need is further out in this forecast. The water need is more near term here. But what we've done is we've gone in and worked with your staff to develop a projected funding plan. How would we execute on this? We would use cash from rates. That would be one source of revenues. We would use debt. That's another source of funds to execute on the capital program. That bottom line there, and again, I apologize for how small that font is, but ultimately that is the amount of money that we would need to bring in rates to support this capital investment. To fund through cash, also fund through debt. But you can see this is $151 million in debt. That's a big chunk. That's a lot to bite off on in 5 years. That may not be realistic, but ultimately that's where we are when we look at the amount of projects that need to be done to get our business, to reinvest in our business and get it back to where it needs to be. So I have 2 different scenarios for you tonight as far as potential rate increases going forward. Scenario 1, I call this the minimum. This is the minimum amount that we need to do. What this does, it gets us back into a positive net position in 2023. So it makes sure revenues match or exceed expenses there in 23. Doesn't really put a lot back into fund balance, doesn't put a lot into reserves. So scenario 1's kind of a minimum amount. Scenario 2 is a greater amount. We've pushed a little more to wastewater on scenario 2, and you're going to see that in some charts here in just a minute. But there's a number of ways we could balance this out, but scenario 2 is quite a bit more aggressive than scenario 1. Absolutely.
How do I go back one slide? Is it just directional? The previous 3? Okay.
There you go.
I just wanted to point out that scenario 1 that he's going to go through, that's what's in the proposed budget is at those rates in scenario 1. So that's what we have baked into the budget for the proposed budget next year. And then we had them put together a scenario 2 so that then you could see a more aggressive rate increase. So what's in the budget that he's about to review is scenario 1. And then we asked them to do kind of a more aggressive approach, scenario 2. That way you can see kind of 2 different approaches and options.
So within our rate plan, we've done a couple things. We have adjusted that minimum bill, as I talked about before, those AWWA standards, that minimum bill pricing, we've adjusted that slightly going forward. We do recommend that you evaluate that on a going forward basis and see, is that the direction you want to go with those meter charges, particularly for those larger meters. At the end of this presentation, there's a bunch of supplemental information. You'll see the actual rate schedules in that supplemental information. So you can see, again, how many meters you have by size, but you can also see what those fixed charges would look like, because they do get fairly substantial for those larger meters. We are maintaining 2,000 gallons in the minimum bill, and let me talk about that for just a minute. There is a volume allotment within that minimum bill. So again, everybody pays that every month regardless of use, but you get 2,000 gallons of use. Why is that important? That's important to maintain that because that helps keep that bill lower for those fixed income customers, which are often the lower volume customers. So if you have a widower living in a home by themselves using very little water, they would never pay any more than that minimum bill, that meter charge. So that's why we put that volume allotment in that meter charge. That's what you do right now. We're not proposing to change that. On the volume side, I'm going to show you another chart here in just a second. You have a 3-tiered rate on the volumetric side, and I'm going to use the word inclining block or conservation-based rate. So right now, there's a 3-tier system where the more you use, the unit rate goes up as you use more water. We're proposing that you add a 4th tier to that structure, trying to send a stronger conservation signal, charging even more for even higher levels of use. Because again, we have a limited resource. Everybody's driven around the area. They see that the lakes are coming down. We want to make sure that we are encouraging conservation and being good stewards of that resource. So we have built that into our rate plan. As I said, we're standardizing that outside city multiplier. We've also taken your largest industrial customer. Right now, they're under a commercial rate structure. We've broken them out into an industrial class, not changing their rate necessarily from what they're paying now, but what we have done is set them scenario 2 side by side. Let's start with scenario 1. 5,000 gallons of service, $62.93. That's the total bill. What we're proposing under scenario 1, combined water, wastewater, taking that to $75.25. That's $12.32 a month. That's the monthly increase under scenario 1 when you put water and wastewater together, $12.32. The more aggressive scenario, scenario 2, you can see we're basically doubling that. That's $24.16. $24.16 is the monthly increase there under scenario 2. So again, that's a much more aggressive approach to side. Again, same thing, water and wastewater, putting that together, $261.10 for the combined bill right now. Scenario 1, that is almost a $50 a month increase there. But again, that's 24,000 gallons of use. That's substantial usage there. Scenario 2, not quite doubled, but almost $95 there, $94.65. So again, that's commercial with 24,000 gallons of use. But let me go back to the chart that we started with. So again, right now you're $62.93. Scenario 1 for residential, 5,000 gallons of use, we would take you up to $75.25. You're still towards the bottom half of this chart. I would also remind you there are many cities on this list, many clients of mine on this list that are doing this exact same activity right now. As they go through budget, they're looking at their pricing. If we were to rerun this in October of this year or January next year, it could look completely different. So just note that every city out there is facing inflationary pressures. Every city is seeing their cost of goods go up. So you're going to see many cities on this list also going up to try and keep up with inflation, also to keep up with their own needed capital plan and to manage growth going forward. Scenario 2, you can see that does put you further up, basically about halfway on the list. That's the more aggressive scenario, that 8709. But again, scenario 1, 7525, that's what's in your budget document right now. So we put some charts in here just to show what does this look like, what does this do to your metrics. Again, under both scenarios, you're in a better financial position long-term and you're able to fund that capital. So that's scenario 1, that's scenario 2. Again, that's just really for us to go in and test the plan. Does the plan work? And the plan works both under scenario 1 and scenario 2. So again, as I said, there's multiple supplemental slides here that actually show the rate schedules that we're proposing. You've got the full capital plan also in the back of this presentation. So if you have questions about projects, that is all there. But ultimately, where you sit as a board of directors is you have a pricing decision to make. If you want to reinvest in your business, if you want to ensure the financial integrity of your business, some type of rate action is needed on a going forward basis. So with that, happy to answer any questions that you may have this evening.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm new to this, so forgive me. How many of the chart that you had on the very first chart we seen? Hold on, let me go back to it. The combined regional bill comparison when we were last?
Yes, ma'am. So this one.
Yeah, so on that chart, how many are North Texas municipal customers?
Customers or members? There's
Members.
There's members in both here.
Okay.
But Farmersville, Forney, Heath, Fate, Wiley, Murphy, Rowlett, Saxe all take from North Texas. Royce City takes from North Texas. Prosper, they're a mix. McKinney, Mesquite, Garland all take from North Texas. Rockwall takes from North Texas. Denison should be GTUA. Frisco, Richardson are North Texas, and Plano's North Texas. Greater Texoma Utility Authority.
And then on that same, we just talked about it. I wanted to know how many actually buy from the North Texas Water District.
So all of those I mentioned would buy from North Texas.
Okay.
So they're either members or customers.
Okay.
The only difference right now between a member and a customer pays 5 cents more per 1,000 gallons than a member does.
Okay.
But they all do purchase from North Texas. Yeah, the ones not on that list, Corsicana does not. Denison does not. Sunnyvale's one I need to check on. I believe they may have a Dallas connection. But then there was also Paris does not, Cleburne does not. So those are kind of the odd man out, if you will.
Thank you.
I have a question. Would you be able to do a blended scenario 1, scenario 2 for us to kind of get us in the middle of that?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, we can do that.
For consideration also?
Yes, sir.
I'd
We
like
can
to see
certainly
that
do
if
that.
you could.
Okay. Happy to do that.
Excellent presentation, by
No,
the
thank
way.
you. I appreciate that.
Did you, in that capital plan, did you consider AMI meters, metering for that? And what is your experience regarding that? I guess that's a little off topic, but.
No, it's a good topic. I'm looking through, so I'm on page 24, page 25, if it's there. Let me see if it's. So AMI meter replacement, that's on page 25. So there's $1.3 million in there for AMI replacement. So that is in the capital plan.
And that gets you how far with the meters we have?
I would have to defer to staff on that, and Press may be able to speak to that.
At 15,000 meters or more?
The meters cost, the AMI portion of the meter is about $200 a piece. So we can divide that out.
Oh, okay, yeah.
About 12,000 meters roughly.
Are you, let me just ask this. Are you familiar with Jacksonville and what they did with AMI meters?
Yes,
Are you
sir.
familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
I've seen
They
them
are one
all.
of my clients.
Okay, yeah. And so they claim significant administrative savings with
Yes,
that.
sir.
And you really believe those are realizable? I assume they are.
If they're claiming it, I'm not going to go against their claim.
Okay.
So I will say that. I've not verified their claim. I'll also say that. The one thing about meters are your cash register. So again, talking in terms of a business, a meter is your cash register. You wouldn't go down to Walmart and run a Walmart without a cash register, right? You also wouldn't run a Walmart with a cash register that is 20 or 30 years old. But there are a number of utilities out there that are running their system with 20 to 30-year-old cash registers. The other thing about meters is they slow down over time. They start under-recording over time. So if you don't keep up and replace those meters, you're likely not recording all consumption on your system. So you're not billing your customers for their full use. So just AMI or not, you need to be replacing your meters, and you need to be doing that. In my opinion, your residential meters should be at least on a 10-year cycle. So that's the metering side. As far as AMI, I've seen some cities that have been able to achieve administrative savings with AMI meters. I've got one client that actually has the ability to remotely shut off a customer. Instead of rolling a truck and going out and shutting off a customer, they're able to do that from the office. You click a button, you turn the meter off. There are other efficiencies and potential savings that can come from AMI systems. I've got another client that has put acoustic leak detection in their system, and that rides on the same network as the meter. And so basically you've got, for lack of a better term, you've got a bunch of ears out in the ground all over the place that as the meter sends data back to the utility billing office, these acoustic sensors are also sending data back and identifying leaks in the system. When you think about a water leak in your system, that is water that you have, it's raw water that you've bought, you've treated it, you've sent it to the customer, and it never got there. That's lost revenue. That's cost incurred that did not generate any revenue. So these AMI systems, I think there are quite some advantages to them. It often depends on how old your existing meters are, but if it's done right, I think you could see some savings with that.
I have another, oh, go ahead.
Well, I noticed with the Jacksonville presentation that they also, all the customers had a app that could actually monitor their water
Yes.
usage in real time.
There are some impressive apps out there. There's actually one where it'll tell you have a leak, and then it'll walk you through how to fix the leak. It'll actually provide you guidance, and I don't know if it tells you how to get to Home Depot or not. But
During Winter Storm Uri, they were able to isolate leaks because of that
yes, sir.
very technology. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I don't know if it's for you or Summer, but will this information be on the city website for citizens to see the prices and everything? Email you? Okay. And then I had another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Hold on, I wrote a lot down. Oh, does North Texas set the price?
So from a wholesale provider standpoint, North Texas charges their members and customers a certain price for service. So it's a certain amount per 1,000 gallons. Under that contract, there's what's called an annual minimum demand that each city must pay for a certain amount of water every year, which is equivalent to their highest annual demand. There's some changes going on to that contract, and those annual minimums are in flux right now, going through a period of time. But that's how their pricing is set up. So they do charge a price per 1,000 gallons.
Okay.
And then again, that's just for the water. All of these cities then have to maintain their own distribution systems, their own pipes, their own pumps. So it's the cost of water plus the cost of distribution and customer collection, things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Just one, it's kind of far-reaching, but you started your presentation off saying infrastructure and capital.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally believe we're probably way behind the power curve in cost
Yes.
for what we pay based on the chart. But this council has spent probably the second biggest number we've spent dollar-wise has been water-related. Press, I think, will agree with that. Water infrastructure and all the things we have within the city. So is this study driven by what we have spent and where we're behind the power curve on water?
So this study is driven. This study is driven by the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan. We started with your fiscal year 22 budget, and in that document, there was a list of all of the capital projects needed on your system. Not what you had spent, but what is needed on the system. What are all the things that we need to do to either correct deficiencies, plan for growth, or repair and replacement on your system? This is all looking forward. It's fantastic given what you have spent, but there's a lot more needs on the system.
But it didn't include the water line replacement then cost, is that right? That's not included in this $174 million.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question about the fund balances that you talked about at the beginning.
Yes, sir.
You said there's a 20% reserve requirement for these fund balances. Which fund are we talking about?
This is the Water and Sewer Fund, so the proprietary Water and Sewer Fund.
In the proposed budget, is that the funds represented in the proposed budget, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm looking there, and it says your target fund balance is $2.35 million, and we actually have double what we need in that fund.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So
Well, when we initially did it, we didn't get the proposed rates until probably,
Sometime probably in the last 2 weeks, so it was a very last minute update. If you, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna say it was a pretty last minute update, so that I wanna say it's like 2.5 million remaining in the fund balance. Or the last 2 weeks we plugged those revenue numbers in and really didn't assess whether we should save that for future capital, maybe put some more items in there.
I see.
This fiscal year, that's something we can discuss between
Right.
the proposed and the final.
And
this
But
is-
that's
I
kind of
can't go
why it's
back.
the way it is.
So what's in the proposal is also taking into account a rate increase of scenario 1.
Yes,
Correct.
that's why.
Yes.
Really what that increase is because of the revenue increase. That
Okay.
we didn't have time to really.
But we didn't increase the expenses proportionally to that revenue increase, if that makes sense. Based on those we didn't put any of those extra projects in.
Right, that's
yeah.
correct. Because when you look at our capital plan, we're assuming that you need to spend $2.34 million in cash going into next year for capital projects. So, some of that likely is going to come out of, rates, reserves, all of that.
Right.
Well, and also too, Ben, we're working on several projects currently that the cost of those projects, just I think a couple months ago, you guys approved a filter project that was bid. It was we budgeted to be $6 million. It actually cost $8 million. So those kind of things, we didn't, there's several things we're working on currently that we're having to scramble to find money for, because just in a 6-month period or even a year period, the cost has gone so far up. So we didn't want to drain that water, wastewater all the way down for that purpose as well too. So, but we can look at it, that's exactly what GP said. We can look between now and the final, and if we need to include any of those projects in there that they've helped us look at those rates, then we certainly can do that, so.
In your study, is there a formula or whatever, does it include growth?
Yes, sir.
Anticipated growth?
Yes, sir. We are including anticipated growth. We understand there's some potential industrial activity that we did not include that because we know where economic conditions are right now. We didn't necessarily want to count on that. So there is some conservatism, if you will, in our numbers. But we did include just residential growth going forward.
That's what I was curious about.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Analysis.
Appreciate that.
I'd like to see kind of a blended scenario 1, scenario 2, just because I'm curious.
Absolutely. Happy to do so.
Thank you very, very much.
No.
Outstanding presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, at this time, we're going to go into executive session, and we'll be out at 6 o'clock for the regular meeting.
actually here to discuss the proposed casino. No, I'm teasing. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be here. We thank you for the service of each person sitting here at the council meeting, and just pray that you'd give them wisdom as they lead our city. I know it's difficult in their shoes to make everyone happy, sometimes anyone happy, but I pray that you'd give them wisdom, strength, and mercy. Bless the meeting tonight. Just pray that ultimately you'd be lifted up and glorified. We are so thankful to live in Hunt County, and I've been here for 29 years, so thankful to be a part of Greenville personally. And so I thank you for each person and their service to us. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. We have a presentation tonight.
Yes, she's here.
National Health Center Week, and Janice? What's your name?
Bernice Burns.
Okay, Bernice, of course. We, the mayor of the city council, Greenville, Texas, is hereby acknowledge the National Health Center Week, whereas health centers serve the nation's safety net, assist in keeping communities healthy and productive, and provide several communities with accessible and dependable care. And whereas community health centers deliver high quality, cost effective, and accessible primary care to all individuals regardless of insurance status or ability to pay. And whereas health centers remain committed to preserving and expanding access in the communities they serve, ensuring that the promise of coverage is translated into reality. And I think you do more than just Greenville, right? You
Yes.
represent all of County.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are not location specific. You can come from anywhere. If you need a service, you can come.
Very good. So, well, we're honored to have you here and recognize this for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'll call your attention to two placeholders in the agenda: citizens to be heard and public testimony. Citizens to be heard can address the council on items that are not already scheduled for public hearing or on the agenda. Public testimony occurs when citizens are invited to address the council on topics that are on the agenda. And tonight, that will start with item 8A. We don't have any public hearings. We don't have any ordinances on our council tonight. So if you'd like to address the council, please present a citizen's comment card to the city secretary. Are there citizens to be heard?
Yes, Wayne Morris.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor. Wayne Morris, 5600 Vale Street, Greenville, and rest of the council. Such a plethora of things that could be discussed tonight. You know, I was trying to figure out which one to talk about. What kind of made my decision, even after looking at things that have come up this week, I think it was something that happened Tuesday. And I was coming back from toward the hospital, heading back down toward Wesley Street. There's a fire truck in front of me, some distance up above. And stopped there at the intersection, but it was just sitting there. And I wondered, what the heck's he doing? Well, as I got closer, I could see he was waiting for the north-south traffic to actually stop for him. And this lasted a significant period of time. Actually, the light changed, and the traffic finally stopped. And that brought me to thinking, I follow social media, the Nextdoor, neighborhood website, Hunt County, City of Greenville, et cetera, et cetera. And I knew probably a lot in city government and public works would love to see somebody quit griping about streets and move on. Well, people still don't like their streets, but I kind of keep a peg count of what seems to be items of interest that people are discussing in any given week or so. And when I was looking it over, I said, wow, it's traffic. Traffic enforcement and the lack thereof. And I talked about this several meetings ago. And what impacted me more than the, regular, hey, we got this, the NASCAR wannabes and everything else on Westland, Stonewall, red light runners, et cetera, was just the fact that somebody commented, I watched a person blow right through a red light, and the next lane was a police car, and the police car did nothing. And I thought to myself, well, I've seen it I don't know how many times. No surprise to me. But this seems to be replacing streets, at least for a while, as what people are concerned about, is the traffic situations. And it's not just the density of traffic. I think people have come to the conclusion that as Greenville grows, our congestion grows. But the blatant disregard of traffic signals, stop signs, yield signs, and just common courtesy. And it is totally out of control. And I know you all have busy days, busy schedules, aren't retired like some of us that have some free time to drive around, but there's times of the day on certain streets I try and avoid like the plague, just because of that. It used to be 1 or 2 cars would go through, the red light. Now it's 3 or 4. Sometimes no cars get through because the traffic just keeps on going. I don't know what the solution is, but I think this needs to be addressed. We've got a new police chief in town. He's drawing his paycheck now. I think he needs to get the pulse of the city, what they're concerned about, and let's move on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Are there other citizens?
Yes, Deborah Hall. Yeah, Hall, okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have a few concerns in my area. I live over off of 5000 on Moulton Street where the old skating rink used to be. There's a duplex in there. Family's been there for 30 years. Well, to get to my place now, I can't even go downtown the back road up between Knight's End and my house because the street department has decided they're going to close my road. So I have to go a mile around to get to anywhere in Greenville. The explanation that the street manager supervisor told me, well, his secretary did, was to stop the motor traffic so they could cut down on pedestrians crossing into the field that's behind my house. Vagrants, trash dumpers, and they've closed it and it's gotten a lot worse. I have to sit out on my back porch with a pistol, watching these people go back and forth to the hotel to get their drugs. It's sad. We've lived there for 30 years. Shouldn't have to feel unsafe in my own home. June 3rd of last year, me and my niece was sitting in the house. We hear 7 gunshots. They were at the corner of my house and shot at a car in the parking lot right in front of my house. Cops were called. There was a report. Don't know whatever happened. Just this 2 weeks ago, the gentleman that runs the indoor soccer field that's just right across from me, he had a tweaker, stoner, whatever you want to call him, come up to his patrons. And he got into an argument with one of his patrons, and he told him he was going to shoot him. I feel very unsafe in my home. We've been here for 30 years. And we need to have some things done about the hotels and the druggies and dropping off prisoners from the state of Texas at Greenville's doorstep so they can live in these hotels around until they run out of money, and then they go into the backfield and live in tents. That's what I had to talk about on that issue. I had several others, but I think it'll have to be another time. And so I appreciate your time, and I won't take up any more.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
We're aware of the problems in that area, and we will try to address them.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much.
That's all.
Okay.
I would like to
Okay.
speak.
Okay, moving on to,
She just handed it.
Sorry. Deidre Mead, 414 Division Street, Greenville, Texas, 75401. I'd like to just touch on a few things. Vastly letting that rot away, as she attested to. I live in that neighborhood as well. The hotels are a problem, the halfway house is a problem. The old Best Western, the fence has been removed. I'm assuming something's about to happen there, probably another request. I would like for you guys to please start thinking now about how to say no to that, because it is a disaster, and a blank piece of concrete would be better there than what we have now. Stanford Street, same area, is impassable and has been for a long time. I realize there's a lot of construction there. I'm not sure what the grand plan is there, but it is very painful. And there's a couple of businesses on there that are suffering. Something that has happened very recently and has really bothered me is the old hospital, the Senior Citizens Center by the middle school. On O'Neill in Texas. At some point, I guess they got approved for apartments there. They have taken the building down, and every single live oak tree. Those trees are probably 100 years old. In our city, we have to do something. Green space, tree ordinance, do not approve any more housing divisions unless they have green space and trees. We're gonna have nothing left. Let's keep the green in Greenville, please. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, no more citizens, I assume, is anyone else? I guess not. So, okay, so now we'll move to Resolution 8A, which is consideration and action on a resolution setting September the 13th of 2022, public hearing date for the fiscal year budget. Is there any, if you wanted to speak to that, or is there a reason to setting a date?
Yeah, all this is you guys just setting a date. First of two resolutions, and the first one is we're setting September 13th as the public hearing date for the 22-23 city budget.
Okay. Is there any public testimony regarding that issue? Is there, I assume there's no public testimony? Okay, what is the pleasure of the council regarding this issue?
Make a motion that we approve that date.
Motion, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, motion second, please vote. Okay. And it passes unanimously. Item 8B, consideration action on a resolution setting September the 13th, 2022 as the public hearing date for the tax rate and accepting the proposed property tax rate for fiscal year 2022. GP?
Yeah, and then the second one is just setting that public hearing date for the tax rate, and accepting the proposed tax rate on September 13th for 22-23 as well.
Public testimony, I assume there's none for setting a date, so what is the pleasure of the council?
I make a motion to approve.
Motion, is there a
Second.
second? And second, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Item 8C, consideration action on a resolution authorizing the city of Greenville to apply for tax Wastewater Development Board Infrastructure Fund. Press.
Good evening, council. Yes, sir, we were notified from the Texas Water Development Board that we were eligible for some money, and we had submitted the project, the retention pond at the north end of the airport, and they notified us that we were eligible for that. Part of the application process is I have to have a resolution from council authorizing us to make that application. It's a 50-50 grant, our loan. The loan is at 0% interest, so it's kind of one and the same. We don't know the amount yet. We've asked for about $4.5 million, so we'll see what we get, but at least we were guaranteed some amount of it, so it's the step in the right direction to get one of these grants.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Well, is it a grant or a loan?
Right now, it's a loan, but it's 0% interest.
Right, but if you still have to pay it back, then it's not a grant, right?
Yeah, well, it's 50-50 match, so we have to match it 50-50, but on the grant, the part we get from them is only a 0% interest on it, so we would have to pay that back.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the funding for the lake was a total of $9 million?
No, total was 4.5, so we're looking about two and a half from us. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, is there public thank you very much, press. Is there public testimony? No public testimony. What is the pleasure of the council regarding this issue?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second, please vote. It passes unanimously. I'd like to ask the city secretary to read the consent calendar, please.
City council meeting minutes from July 26th and resolutions approving offers to purchase property at 3116 Silver and 3001 O'Neill.
Okay. Is there any public testimony regarding these issues? If not, what is the pleasure of the council?
I make a motion to approve.
Okay. Motion is there second? Motion is second, please vote. And it passes unanimously. There are no boards, there are no city staff and city council reports. City discussion of proposed agenda items. Are there any discussion items proposed or not? If not, you have boards and commission minutes before you, the substandard structure board, and if not, I think this city council may have just, Mr. Evans is a historian, but we may have just set a record tonight for the shortest council meeting ever. So, thank you for being here. We're meeting in executive session. We have a few items to meet on. We don't anticipate any vote following that meeting. Thank you very much for attending tonight.